Listeners' discretion is advised as we'll be talking about mental health issues. If anyone out there is struggling with any mental health issues, call Lifeline on 131114 and please reach out to your family and friends. G'day, welcome to True Blue History. I'm Adam Blum. Today is a very special day. It is the 50th episode of True Blue History, and I'm joined by my great friend, former Major Army Intelligence Officer Sarah Watson, and Sarah has joined us today to talk about her career in the ADF and her deployment to Iraq and her life after service. Hi Sarah, thanks for joining us on the show.
G'day Adam, thanks for having me. Very excited.
No, Sarah, thank you. It's an honour and a privilege to have you on. So, Sarah, can you tell us about you as a young lady? Where did you grow up? What was school like? And what were your interests and hobbies?
Sure, Adam. So, welcome to Yass. Here we are. This is my hometown where I grew up, and I've obviously landed back here some 30 years later after an army career. So, yeah, I grew up here. My parents moved from Sydney when I was about 3 years old, and they rented a farm just outside town and had a bit of a rural lifestyle until we moved into town when I was about 5, so I could attend school and had a pretty normal Aussie rural town upbringing whereby I went to school and then every afternoon was characterised by attending some sort of sport that was on offer while Mum and Dad were at work. So every afternoon I'd walk up to the War Memorial Olympic pools so I could do swimming squad, and then after that we'd go and do netball training or touch training or dancing. So yeah, it was a pretty good childhood and had some solid friends. You know, we got up to all sorts of mischief pre-iPhones, pre-computers. I didn't even have one of those Commodore 64 thingos, so it was always on the bike and adventuring down in the local creeks on the weekends. So yeah, pretty good Aussie typical 80s upbringing in country town.
So what was school like for you? What was your favourite subject, and what did you want to do when you left school?
So I was a pretty good student. I really enjoyed school. I really enjoyed, obviously, PE was my favourite subject and still is. I guess once I went up to sort of high school and started to realise you've got to start working a bit towards what you want to be as an adult, I got interested in, sort of a bit of psychology and English and sort of the arts sort of subjects that I kind of enjoyed doing. And but I always knew I really wanted to do something physical. And by the time I got to year 12, I was hoping to get into physiotherapy, but unfortunately I didn't get the grades. It was higher for medicine, I think. It was higher to get into physio, the grades, than to get into medicine. So it was obviously very competitive, and I didn't make the grade and ended up, enlisting in the army instead.
And I read, Sarah, in your bio that between 14 and 18, you had an amazing work ethic and you held 3 jobs. Like, what inspired you to have those 3 jobs, and where did the work ethic come from? I
think I definitely got that from my dad. He was, in a good way, a workaholic. He was an accountant in town here in Yass, and he basically pretty much did the whole town's tax returns, all day, after hours, on the weekends. He worked really hard, not because he was money orientated, because he charged bugger all for a tax return, but he just loved helping people and wanted to work hard and help others. And I guess that's sort of what was ingrained in me as a child. And and that if we wanted things, we had to work for it. And that's why I knew I wanted to get my focus as a teenager was to get my L's and then my P's. So I had 3 jobs. You're right. I worked in the local, used to be called Fossey's, which is now like, Country Target or whatever it is, and then a local supermarket. And then once I was old enough, I got a job at drive-through Macca's in Yass. My Yass, that sign on the highway. Source of amusement for a lot of people. But Yeah, so worked as much as I could when I wasn't at school, saved enough money for my first car, and that was the ultimate goal. But yeah.
So you mentioned that you joined the military after high school. Was there any military history in the family that made you want to join the military, or were you the first?
So my brother actually joined straight after year 12. He went enlisted as a soldier and went to Kapuka. So I guess it was something in the back of my mind, but also my father sort of really encouraged me to look into Australian Defence Force Academy because it was local, it was pretty close to home, Canberra, and I'd get my degree paid for, which as an accountant obviously was good mathematics for him. And so, yeah, there was a little bit of that was, apart from that, I didn't really know other than my brother, and I knew my grandmother and father, my dad's side, my dad's parents had sort of served as well during World War II. And then I subsequently found out my grandfather, my mum's dad, had served with the Royal Air Force in World War II on the British bombers. So that just sort of emboldened me to be wanting to carry on that tradition and of service. And the super. I mean, they passed away before I even really got to talk to them about their careers. But I know that that history that you have in the family and the service they gave to our nation was something I'm really proud of.
So in 1997, you went to ADFA and you graduated with a Bachelor of Arts majoring in history and politics. What made you choose these subjects?
Well, it was actually very limited choices when I went through ADFA. There was a science degree, arts or engineering, and I had not an engineering bone in my body. So the options were fairly sort of streamlined in that there weren't a huge amount of options. I actually wanted to be a PTI. I didn't realise you couldn't do that as an officer. So I was like, well, what are the subjects for being a physical trainer in the army? And they're like, no, that's not an option. So those are the reasons why I became, I did politics and history. But, it's more to teach you as a 18-year-old how to kind of manage your time and, get through studies and prove that you kind of have the ability to use your brain, but also complete the military training alongside the degree. It was not because I was super passionate about politics or history, but obviously I learned a great deal of history and politics, which has obviously evolved since I did my degree. But yeah, it was a good sort of solid foundation of learning how to analyze information, and then that obviously helped as I became an intelligence officer, how to sort of interrogate information and figure out what could be truth, what could be false, and figure out those sorts of things.
So you mentioned that you went to officer training at the Royal Military College in 2000 and you graduated into the Australian Intelligence Corps. What did you find most challenging whilst you were actually at the Royal Military College?
Oh, look, it was a culture shock for me. I'd done ADFA for 3 years, but it was a lot less intense in terms of army training because we had the university studies alongside. I did struggle the first sort of 6 to 8 weeks. I remember calling my dad and saying, can't do this. I've got to get out of here. I'm not cut out for this. He encouraged me to just take it a day at a time, which I tried to do, and things actually did improve. And I realised that all of us were struggling. We were all in the same boat, just people didn't talk about how tough they were finding things. Anyway, the camaraderie and the teamwork really was what got me through Duntroon. I actually thrived in the end, and I did well and managed to graduate into a corps which was highly sought after and competitive. So I guess, that whole second guessing yourself and whether you're worthy or your capabilities are such that would serve you well in an army career. It was always in the back of my mind, am I good enough? So, but, got through the year and graduated with my class. And
because it's designed, isn't it, Sarah? It's a pressure cooker. Like they expect a lot and you have to give a lot at Duntroon.
Yeah, definitely. It's does sort of create an atmosphere of you need to bring out your best, and that's the old army motto, but you really do. There's no place for sort of coasting through. Certainly back then there was, it was super competitive, and it's just a tough environment where there was just non-stop assessment, non-stop sort of physical challenges, sort of food and sleep deprivation activities, and really trying to push you to your very extreme to see what would happen under that pressure. Yeah.
So for you, what was it that interested you going into the Army intelligence field?
Well, back then, Adam, it was quite limited for what corps women could choose to go to. So I had an option of transport, logistics, signals, or intelligence at that stage, or medical corps, I think. So yeah, it was a fairly limited opportunities, and I thought, well, out of those 5, I think intelligence sounds most intriguing and exciting. So I put that in my little tick box preference, and knowing that it was super competitive, there was only 5 spots allocated to our graduating class of 200 and something. So, and over 50 people had put it as their first preference. So I was so privileged and lucky to be allocated to Intelligence Corps, and had a great career after that.
So can you give us a little bit of background on the Army Intelligence Corps and how it's evolved to its current day?
Well, that's I'm on the spot here. Back in 2000, I would have been able to tell you the historical data on how the Australian Intelligence Corps came to be, but over 25 years of fog. Anyway, I think, it was created because there was obviously a need to have an intelligence arm whereby we could be forewarned for combat and have that edge over the enemy when it came to battlefield tactics. So at the tactical level, obviously, that's what it was about, was trying to war game and figure out the enemy's plan based on the map to ground, based on the assets at our disposal versus their disposal. And then as you sort of evolve into different levels, like operational and then strategic intelligence, that is very much, a different sort of approach to how we would sort of support troops on the ground. But yeah, fascinating stuff. Obviously, I don't also remember sort of signing a waiver of top secret confidentiality. So I guess I'm limited in what I can sort of share from my experiences. But come 50 years from now, I'm allowed to say everything.
So your first posting was Troop Commander of the Information System Troop, as you said it, the Geeks, of the 145th Signals Unit based at Holsworthy. What did this role entail, and how was your first experience in your first posting?
Yeah, so Adam, we had to, as an intelligence officer, do regimental time in other army environments. So Signals was the one I went to, and my first job as a 21-year-old in charge of 30 all men, very smart young men who had chosen to serve in Signals in the information, so IT sort of support, and even 23 years ago, that IT, is much less advanced as it is today, but still, we were talking satellite comms and things like this. So smart guys. I didn't know how, I didn't have the technical skills they had, but I had their trust, I think, so that whenever they told me what was going on, I could, figure out what next and be able to guide our troop in order to provide the best support, comms support to whatever unit we were supporting at the time. It was challenging, 21, straight out of college, as we call it, and a vast range of ages of people I was in charge of, many different sort of backgrounds, some married, some young, straight out of Kapuka. So different personnel challenges as well. So that was a massive steep learning curve. But at the end of the day, I felt like I had their respect because I was approachable, and I always they knew that they were my priority, that people were Army's biggest asset, and I wanted to make sure that they were looked after. So.
It would have been very challenging, especially it's something that when you take leadership on, especially at a young age too, you sometimes have a lot of pushback too from older people, especially when you're younger. And I've noticed, I've seen that too firsthand myself in the RFS, and it is challenging. And sometimes you question, you're going, am I actually good enough? And but it's good to see that you had the respect. I wasn't so lucky. I had to earn it, and it was a challenge because at first I'd been with these people for so long as a firefighter, and then came up through the ranks, and I thought it'd just continue on, but I had to prove myself, and I can see at 21 it would have been a challenge.
Yeah, totally. You're right. You can't just command respect. You have to earn it, like you said. And I think sometimes in the military, the rank is it's a bit superficial. You can't just expect because you're wearing a rank to have people trust you. You have to earn that trust. You have to lead by example and show that, you believe in the purpose as much as everybody in the chain, and that they then want to believe in that too and follow you. So
absolutely. I think you've just hit a key point there where it's sometimes you've got to, there's plans that are put in place, and you've seen it, Sarah, throughout your career and in life as well. Sometimes plans are put in place and you look at them and go, well, that's a really shit plan. And we've had it on the fire ground, and we go, that's not going to work, but it's the only plan. And you have to go forward and say, guys, this is it. I know it's crap, but we have to do it. And you know that. You've seen it firsthand as well.
Yeah, that's it, Adam. You have to believe, have the presence of mind and be agile enough to adapt the plan. Obviously, that's a big part of, one of the core principles of war is flexibility, adaptability. So yes, you need to pivot when you need to, but also have the confidence to believe in your plan and execute it.
Absolutely. So in 2003, you started working as an intelligence officer in headquarters 3rd Brigade, becoming a French linguist for the Army, and subsequently specialised in signals intelligence. Can you share with us what this role entailed, and how long have you spoken French?
Yeah, so Adam, I really wanted to go to language school. I think as an intelligence officer, most of us were encouraged to take on a second language. It does help in the intelligence world. So I was super fortunate enough to convince the careers advisor that they needed a French linguist. Not sure how I convinced them, because tactically and strategically we weren't really at war with France, but we did have a lot of interoperability with French forces in New Caledonia. Lots of exercises we do regularly with them, and things like that. So yeah, I got to do French for a year. Studied French at the language school in Laverton in Victoria. And it was one of the best years. I just loved it. It was hard, obviously, all day in the classroom, then about 4 hours of study a night to be able to pass. But it was totally worth it, and got many great opportunities out of that to represent the ADF on exercise with French forces, and one of the highlights of my career for sure. It's
probably one of the hardest languages to learn, Sarah. I've been over to France, and I used to say au revoir instead of au revoir, and they used to laugh at me a lot, and it wasn't until someone pointed out that they said, no, it's au revoir, not au revoir. So and one of the locals said to me once, oh, you speak great French, and not knowing that, it was only that I got pulled up, so I can understand the challenges that you would have faced.
Oh, look, it is. Look, it's not the most difficult. Arabic and Chinese were by far a language that probably was beyond my capabilities, but French is not as easy as I guess people would presume. It is. There's a lot of faux amis, false friends in French, like a lot of words that look exactly like spelt the same as in English, but completely different word or meaning. So yeah, but no, it was a wonderful year. The French absolutely just appreciate people who give it a go with their language, because I'd say the vast majority of French people can speak a decent level of English from my experience. They learn it in school, but they do appreciate people who even just give it a go. So I'm sure they really appreciated your effort.
Yeah, no, they did actually, and I always found when I was over there, if like people said to me that the French are rude, and they're really not. If you try and I asked a local once, I said, why are you so, I've had impressions that you guys are so rude, and they said, look, all we ask is if you try our language, just try. We know that you're a foreigner, and I've had nothing but great experiences with the French. So I understand exactly what you said, that if you try, most French people really want to, they're there to help you.
Yeah, definitely. I think you'll find with all cultures, if you take an interest in their way of life, their culture, their language, then absolutely there's that mutual respect. So I think it's just super important.
Absolutely. So in late 2006, you deployed for 7 months to the US Air Base in southern Iraq, Talil Air Base, and to provide strategic intelligence support to Overwatch Battlegroup West. Can you share with us what was involved in this role and how you felt you performed?
Sure. Yeah, Adam, it was obviously my goal and dream to deploy once I finally got into the army and got my groove. That was, that's why you join. You want to serve and you want to serve your country. So I was fortunate enough to be selected for being attached to basically the Overwatch Battlegroup, which was based on 2 Cavalry Regiment based in Darwin, and 5-7 RAR, also at the time based up in Darwin. And so we, as a battle group, we formed up in Darwin a few months prior to do the lead up training to go in and continue operations in the Talil sort of area of operations in support of Op Catalyst, supporting Allied troops. So yeah, I was attached. I was an attachment to this battle group from my place, from my work in Canberra. I was posted to the then Defence Signals Directorate, which is now Australian Signals Directorate, one of the big intelligence agencies based in Canberra. So I pretty much was attached with one other person from there, and we provided that strategic intelligence link to the battle group back to Australia via our allied partners' communication facilities as well. So we really heavily relied on our accesses to our US, British and other nations' intelligence feeds. So it was I was basically given the role of being that TS conduit, top secret conduit to the battle group. That was the only way they got any sort of raw intelligence, and I provided sort of briefings to the commander every day, and the patrols going out every day. We would discuss what threats they might be facing whilst out on the ground.
So what was life like on the base, and what was a normal day for you?
So for me, because again I was the only one with access to the top secret facility, I had one offsider. She and I had to sort of maintain 24-hour ops 7 days a week. So often, my day would start about 5:30. I would get up, walk down to work, and in the, Kevlar and helmet, and walk down from the accommodation lines to work, log in, check any sort of intelligence came in over the night I wasn't there, and do up the TS or top secret info for the morning prayers. Then I'd, if I could, get off and get a quick breakfast and back to sort of preparing briefings and whatnot for the day. All day in the small, we had a little tent. Basically, we were set up in a tent with massive barbed wire. So it was pretty obvious what with all the sort of indicators with the satellite dish on the roof of the tent. It was pretty basic stuff. There wasn't very flash accommodation, but Yeah, and often I'd be up on on a ladder trying to get a better connection. We had 64 kilobytes per second feed, so you can imagine, I don't know if that means anything to kids these days, but it's like pretty much nothing. So yeah, it was yeah, it had its challenges. Long days, heavy workload, relentless.
What was your interaction like with the locals?
I didn't get out and about that much. I was bogged away in my little secret squirrel tent. But on occasions, I did get out with the electronic warfare detachment, who did a lot of the tactical out on the ground stuff with the combat troops. So I wasn't meant to be seen. And that's, again, a lot of us intelligence peoples are hidden figures. They're not meant to be known that they're there. So yeah, it's hard to describe, Adam. It's kind of like, well, yeah, it's you want to be proud of what you're doing, but you also have to be kind of quiet and humble in order to make sure that you're not compromising the rest of the battle group. So on occasions I would see kiddies, in the little markets and, just sort of without language, interact, and that was super uplifting and reinforced reasons why I felt I should be there with the battle group, that we were fighting for sort of their freedom, and we were there when Saddam Hussein was hung, which obviously led to a spike in insurgent activity. But he was a dictator, even though he might have had some sort of order in the country. It wasn't a good way of life for the people. And, you got to believe in that you're there for the right reasons, and seeing, civilians there and interacting with them, hoping that their future is going to be brighter, was a big driver for being there.
Absolutely. So did you, obviously you were there but seen, but really not, not seen but heard. Did you get to see Iraq, the country, outside much, or were you just really, was it mission focused and just there to do your work?
I was pretty lucky in terms of, with my role as actually, had the liaison officer section on my title, and so I had to do a fair bit of travel around the Iraqi battle space. I went to Baghdad a couple of times in order to interact with the Americans up there, to keep that good relationship, so they understood what we were doing, because we really relied on their intelligence feeds, and not being able to, for them not seeing us, like, you really, they're back of mind. So to be able to interact with the Americans, say, hey, we're here to, what you're providing us is life-saving, thank you, that sort of interaction, liaison. Similarly with the Brits, they were based in Basra, down south from where we were. A lot of very hairy kind of area. Again, liaising with the British counterparts was really important, and maintaining those relationships. And they actually needed access to Talil for their satellite comms, so there was a lot of sort of working, so a lot of chopper rides to and from Basra, both ways, and so yeah, it was good. I did get to see. I was pretty lucky in that respect. I got to travel. Wasn't just totally confined all the time in the tiny tent.
So while you were in country, did you have any close calls and sort of moments that it could have gone either way?
Yeah, there was a few IDF indirect fire rocket attacks on base pretty regularly. They were pretty bad. They weren't very good at targeting, so be dropping around, but fortunately never on the Australian section of the airbase, luckily. But yeah, you felt that reverberation. You knew that, sugar plums, I'm going to be smashed if they get it right today. But you just hoped and prayed that it wasn't going to be the way, and take cover behind a concrete barrier, put all your gear on, and hope for the best. There was one time when I was in Basra where I was there on my own, and I was put in this transit accommodation tents again, and they got smashed all the time with IDF, and that was much more accurate. They were closer. The insurgents got closer to the base, so their targeting was a bit more accurate. And I just remember lying in this tent with all these stretchers, like right and left of me, and this is like 2 a.m. I'm lying there wide awake with my helmet on, my body armor. under the stretcher in a shell scrape, thinking, this is curtains for me because they're so close. These bombs are dropping all around. That was pretty scary. I was not feeling super, and there was no one else in the tent. Like hundreds of stretchers, just me. For whatever reason, there wasn't many visitors. But yeah, I was pretty. that was a moment I'll probably never forget.
Absolutely. And looking back on your deployment, how did you think you went overall, and was it what you thought it would be?
Look, I think I've talked about this on a few different channels of, media, but I struggled. I really did. I think I was fried. I was overworked, overstressed, and I started having reactions I didn't really understand, nightmares, hypervigilance, sort of just tolerance really low. And I left Iraq very different person. My hair was falling out. I lost a lot of weight. I was suspicious of people. I don't know. I obviously was. I was I had started to deteriorate mentally, but I didn't really know what was going on.
And you felt that, like, obviously you felt disillusioned, and you felt that you wanted to discharge from the army, and what convinced you to stay and obviously continue your career?
So I put in my discharge papers soon after returning from Iraq, thinking I was definitely not cut out for this sort of stuff. My careers advisor at the time was a female, Fleur. She was amazing. She said to me, look, maybe think about it, take leave without pay instead, and then you've got the opportunity to maybe come back when you've kind of processed some stuff. Well, she didn't use those words, but that's probably what I needed to do. So that's what I did, yeah.
And you went over and you took your leave without pay, and you went and travelled Europe, and you actually went and lived in the UK for 18 months. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I met a boy and I moved to UK and lived with him. He was in the British Army, and I was just this anonymous partner. No one actually cared or knew my military history or didn't ask. So it was kind of good for me. I got to just sort of go under the radar, study. I took up a master's degree, or continued and finished that. And I worked in a gym at the university when I was living in Belfast, and just became a whole different person. Like I just could just completely shut off that, sort of compartmentalize that military person who I was and be somebody else.
So for you, how important was this part of your sort of redevelopment, as we would say?
Look, I think in hindsight, I should have probably really dealt with what was going on when I left Iraq and figured out my issues then, because obviously I just put it in a little box and parked it way back in the memory. And we all know now unprocessed trauma will always come back and find you. So at the time, yeah, it's great. Happy, in love, doing things I loved, not dealing with the pain that I was obviously carrying around deep in myself. So yeah, look, it did come out years later, and happy to talk about that.
As you've said, Sarah, it's something that you can only put a Band-Aid on for so long, and then it festers away, and then it can be the smallest thing that makes you just go bang and just lose it, and just, I've been there myself. I know exactly, and mine was simple. The day that I broke down and I've told you before, attempted suicide, was a boss simply just yelled at me, and that was it. I was already struggling, and I just went to hide it and for so long, and then that was the snapping point that I said, that's it, I'm done on this earth. And I know exactly, it's something that we will talk about as we go along, but it's absolutely, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm really sorry that you went through that, and I'm pretty sure it's a fairly common human experience, sadly. But the more we talk about it, like we do, and like you do on your podcast, it's so important to destigmatize the fact that we struggle.
Absolutely, and it's, Sarah, it's okay to struggle. Like it's it's okay to speak up. I'm forever saying on the podcast, it's okay to speak. It's not weak to speak. It's actually, it's a strength to address that you've got an issue, and you're putting your hand up and saying, hey, I'm not okay. I need a bit of help, and it's okay. And I'm such an advocate for mental health now that, and I said it to you many times when I've spoken to you, and I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for seeking help. And I'm honest. I'm open and honest with that I would not be here today. So, and I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you, and I wouldn't have created the podcast. And I believe that life's there to be lived, and we need to live every day as it could be our last.
Definitely. I think that, strength through struggle is it's obviously is real. Like you can only be your best when you've been at your worst, I believe.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. So after 18 months away, you came back to the army, and what was that like once you came back, being away for so long?
Yeah, I was refreshed. I'd been upskilled. I'd had a good break and not thought about anything to do with Iraq or military for a good while. However, it wasn't long before I was thrust into a job that really kind of brought up a lot of stuff that I had to sort of revisit. I was posted to Defence Intelligence Organisation, another bigger agency we have in Canberra, and my first job back there was desk officer for the Middle East, all of the Middle East, including Iraq. And then obviously that year I returned, the Arab Spring occurred, and Middle East went back to shit, excuse the French, and it was pretty intense, like a lot of long hours again, reliving the things that were happening when I was in Iraq were all happening again, and so it didn't take too long for things to start bearing down on me mentally.
And did you, at this stage, you were promoted to major, and what was that like, and the challenges that you faced in the new role of being a major?
Well, I guess traditionally the role of major, you're sort of a 2IC or a company commander in a battalion, and so that wasn't my sort of path. I was, again, a sort of a lone ranger. I posted into a bigger defence organisation as an analyst, I guess. So wearing the major rank in an organisation like that, I was pretty low in the food chain. I wasn't responsible. I only had a few sort of people reporting to me. So in terms of that leadership role, it was sort of less intense, but more intense in terms of an academic, using your brain and having sort of understanding of a bigger picture, strategic sort of picture of what does this mean, the so what for Australian Defence Force as a whole, rather than an army unit, if that makes sense.
So in 2011, you welcomed your first son, George. And how would you describe this time working in a stressful environment, which the role that you'd just taken on, and being a first-time mum? How was that for you?
Oh, it was hard. It was really hard. I think becoming a mum in my 30s, sort of after being in the military for then, 12, 13, 14 years or whatever it was, and having all that autonomy and freedom as a sort of a person, then becoming a mum, and then also having that persona of military officer, it was super stressful and hard. And I didn't have a very well baby. He was... didn't sleep. He was screaming a lot, in a lot of pain, colicky. And, as an officer in the military, you're a solution, you're a solutions focused person, and not having any control over a small human. And it's quite disconcerting. You just thrust into this world of uncertainty and finding your way. You don't get a manual, you don't get a 4-year training to become a mother, of practicing on babies. Like, you just get one all of a sudden and you got to make that baby survive. So it's so, we don't talk about how hard it is transitioning to becoming a parent either, I think. And that is, it was very hard for me.
So with the stress, like, of being where you were, being a mum, and the role, it did get too much, and you did post out of the role that you were in, and you posted into the Army headquarters working in personal policy and career management staff officer role. What was that like for you, being out of the pressure cooker?
Yeah, it was definitely the right move for me. Sad to sort of step away from my intelligence role, but equally excited to take on, learn new skills in personnel policy and career management. So also meant that I could potentially work from home because, intelligence you can't take home. It's all top secret, vaulted away, sort of stay in the tippity top secret building. So that was a bit more flexible too. My son was only 4 months when I returned to work because I had a big mortgage and had to pay the bills as well. And I was hugely sleep deprived, but I was still trying to learn a new job, learn policy, learn how to be a HR, human resources sort of person. So again, pretty stressful, but it was another part of the journey, and I actually quite enjoyed that. I worked for some really good people, including Natasha Fox, who's now our Deputy Chief of Army. She was my boss at the time. This is over 10 years ago, but she was an amazing person to work for, and really, as being a mother herself, understood the challenges of having a newborn and trying to maintain a career. So that really helped.
I'll say one thing about you, Sarah, is you do love a challenge. You throw yourself into challenges a lot. Yeah.
I think you gotta like maintain the rage. I don't know. That was something we just sort of were taught during training, and just keep holding on to that train. And yeah.
So what did you take away from this posting when you were, and what did you learn going forward?
I think I learned a lot about our greatest asset, I'll call it again, our people. Personnel policy was working on how we're going to look after our people, because I think, you can't just sort of treat people like an old bit of kit when they're fried or they're burnt out. How do we help them? So that was kind of that sort of stuff, as well as, housing and leave and health, all those sorts of things. Gave me a new perspective on people and how we can look after people. I got into a bit of gender equality, gender initiatives as well while I was at career management. So obviously the retention of women was a big issue. When I started, it was 8% female in the Army. When I left, it was 9%. So, there's a big issue there, that how are we going to start retaining our women? How are we going to start making it a work environment that women can remain in post children? Or, how do we support a more inclusive, diverse workplace? So that I really loved that part of my Army journey in my later stages of my career.
And your final posting was to the 1st Intelligence Battalion in Brisbane prior to your discharge from the Army in mid-2015. And in mid-2015, you were medically discharged from the Army. Did that come as a shock for you, or had it been building for some time?
Yeah, sort of. I had hidden the fact that I had finally been diagnosed in 2013 with post-traumatic stress and major depression. But I had not disclosed this to the Army, and we managed, my medical team managed this by pregnancy and maternity leave. So because, it was hugely stigmatised back then, and I didn't want to be known as someone with a mental health disorder in the military. That was career ender. So, however, unfortunately, you can't hide behind maternity leave or for forever, and I wasn't getting better in the time that the Army needed me to. So unfortunately, I didn't really get the time to heal and recover from those conditions. I was diagnosed and I was discharged.
So is that like, obviously you've been out a while now, is that still like you're very connected still with veterans and still serving personnel? Is that still something that they're facing today with being medically discharged? Does that still happen today?
Look, I think now that they've set up the Joint Transition Authority in Defence, they've recognised that people were being sort of pushed out on medical grounds without suitable and sufficient support. So they've recognised the gap and the problem that it was, to try and improve that. I think people still are getting sort of discharged from military without that good deal of support, but there are so many now veteran organisations that have popped up based on the fact that they recognise veterans are more likely to struggle post-career, because it's more than a career, it's a vocation, it's a way of life. And you take away that environment where you've grown up and served, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years in a certain way, trying to return to civilian life and a civilian job is hugely challenging for most people.
So for you, once you had been medically discharged, was there support put in place to help you in your journey from transition from defence to civilian?
No, it wasn't great, Adam, at the time. I think there was a lot of shame around my discharge. I felt a failure. I felt like I'd let the intelligence corps down. I felt like I'd let the Army down, and mostly I'd let myself down. So I sort of withdrew anyway, and there wasn't a great deal of support either. I tried to do my own DVA, Department of Veteran Affairs claims, to try and make sure that I had some sort of health support and financial support moving forward, but that just reinforced to me that I was a failure, because I couldn't seem to get any success in the Veteran Affairs claims process, and that sort of compelled me to try and help others after my own poor experiences of transition, and then trying to get the Veteran Affairs claims process done. I felt like there was a real problem, and that I wanted to help others not go through what I'd been through.
So for you at that point of time, did you feel, Sarah Watson, the former Major, Army Intelligence Officer, did you lose your purpose, and how did you find your purpose again?
Yeah, I lost everything. I felt like I'd lost everything when I was discharged. I had no longer a tribe, and I was up in Brisbane, and my then husband at the time was, in a very high demand job, way out bush all the time. So I'm home with a small baby and a toddler, and like, I just felt so isolated. So yeah, I had no purpose. It was a very dark time in my life. Of course I had my purpose, was my children, but then they couldn't even speak. I couldn't even talk to anybody about how I was feeling. I was just in survival mode, trying to keep these kids alive and support a serving husband. So it was struggle town, hugely struggle town. And it, I guess, and my dad had passed away too, and he was my sort of biggest ally and support guy. And so I felt completely broken, and I actually did a charity bike ride. I didn't really ride bikes, but I heard that, I got into this bike ride for raising money for cancer, because Dad died of cancer. And that ignited something in me. That ignited a passion for cycling, and that sort of speared me off in a new direction to find purpose. Yeah.
So for you, Sarah, what do you think needs to happen for veterans as they transition? What more support networks need to be put in place as they transition out of defence?
Yeah, look, I think that it's really important that wherever that person is leaving defence from, they have in their community, they've got the support mechanisms in place to turn to if things do go south. Let's hope many people can sort of do that transition. They're leaving because they want to. That's the ideal. You know, they serve their time, they do their military time, then they go into a new career. Like, you know, that I think that's, you know, society's evolving, that we have more than one job in our lives. I think back when I joined and prior to that, you joined the military, stayed for life. You know, that was the culture. It's not so much like that anymore. So I think things will evolve. But in my era and prior, just, you know, there's going to be people who have served 30, 40 years now who are going to now face the life on the outside. And so long as those people are really supported and got the connections they need to thrive post-military, then we're doing the right things.
Absolutely. So, Sarah, who inspires you and motivates you to keep going when you are feeling in your darkest place, and who's the people that bring you back to being Sarah Watson, the happy, smiley, got purpose? Who is it?
I think the people around me. I think, you know, you choose people to be in your life that energize you. And I think, you know, daily I'm inspired by people I work with, people I volunteer with, that, you know, be it Little Athletics or rugby or the local RSL branch where I volunteer. You know, I think people are good. Like, people want for others to be happy and feel good, mostly, I think. So I think, yeah, and my children, obviously, they're my reason for getting up every day, and I want to be the best example I can be for them. I think I want to sort of show them that working hard and being a good person is the best way to live your life.
Absolutely. And you mentioned just before that you got into cycling and you got into triathlons and Ironmans. How did this come about? And you went to Hawaii in 2018. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so Adam, I got into the cycling. I was I'd put on 20-something kilos after my second son and was feeling really flat. And slowly, as I got better at cycling, I just stripped the weight and got better at, you know, riding up hills. And then my ex-husband was doing triathlons, and I would go and watch him. And then I thought, one day I'm gonna do this. So actually, that's what got me into it. I registered for my first half Ironman distance, which is 1.9k swim, 90k bike, and a 21k run. I did that in 2017, and the first one I competed in, I qualified for the world champs. So I thought, I'm not too bad at this sport. I'm okay. Like, I'm nearing 40, but there's life in the old girl. So I thought, then setting my sights on the next thing, I'm going to do a full Ironman. Did my first full Ironman in 2018, in the year I was turning 40, and qualified for Kona, which is the Hawaii Ironman World Championships, like, you know, the iconic thing I used to watch as a kid on Wide World of Sports, seeing these immense humans doing this crazy, crazy stuff. And I got to do that. I did that just before I turned 40 in 2018. It was just like a pivot point in my life, going, you know what, I can do anything. I've got this. So
what is it about triathlons and Ironmans that what is it for you? What do you get out of it?
Oh, look, I think it's that following a process, you know, seeing something that seems so unachievable, but believing in the training that you're going to put in, believing in your body, believing in, you know, your dream, and then going after it. Like, I cannot tell you how satisfying it is to work so hard, like putting in the hours of the training, which no one sees. You know, you're there at 5 a.m. on the bike or swimming or whatever. And then come race day, your body just delivers this performance that you just, like, it's indescribable when you've trained all that time, you've followed the process, you've believed in the process, and you trusted yourself and gone and done that thing.
And I think too, Sarah, what it is, and I've got a friend who does, well, you're a friend who does triathlons and Ironmans, but I've also got another friend who does it. And he said to me, He goes, mate, you're surrounded by amazing people. Like and you're part of a community, and you know, you feel that you belong. And he said, mate, you've got to get on. Like, you're just surrounded by positive people.
Yeah, no, totally. I think you got to do that. You can't sort of, there are going to be people that come along your life and say, oh, well, you're selfish for doing that, or you're crazy, or you're self-harming by exercising all that time. But no, I love it. It makes me happy. It inspires others. I bring people along with me on the journey, and what's bad about that? You know, I'm living a healthy life. You know, I think it's important to challenge yourself, but also recognize the things that make you happy.
Absolutely. And I think you've just exercise, I've learned through my own journey, it is so good for your mental health. And it's so important. My psychologist has said to me that, Adam, it's great that the biggest thing that I had, the biggest challenge was for me was my weight. And, 2 years ago I was 160 kilos. I'm now 100 kilos. And it's through he said to me, he goes, your biggest thing, and once you lose the weight, he said, your life will change and things will open up. And it has, it really has. I've really got a positive outlook on life now. And it is. Exercise for mental health is so important. And you know this as well.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely. I bang on about it all the time. It's the body keeps a score. So if you're keeping your body healthy and giving it those good endorphins and flushing the system out through sweating and things like this, your mind is going to be humming. Like, I think that body mind link is you can't underestimate that. So looking after the body, like it's your machine, it's your vehicle to go and conquer things, and if you can be vibrating at your best physical capacity all through your life, why not do it?
Absolutely. And as you've said it, you're going to be vibrating mentally at a great level as well. So it's a key point that you touch on. And in 2017, you completed at the Invictus Games, winning 5 gold and 2 silvers in swimming, cycling and athletics. Can you tell us about how important the Invictus Game is for veterans?
Oh, look, that's a great initiative that Prince Harry set up back in, I think it was 2013 or 14. He recognised that, so many sort of service people coming back from modern conflicts, limbless, and, the invisible injuries, so many that have been affected by their service. So thought, well, how are we going to support these people to find their happiness again and bring about some sort of, sense of achievement. So I just absolutely love it. I think it's continuing on. Our next team is getting ready to take off to go to The Hague next month and compete at the Invictus Games. So, it gives those people who thought that maybe that's it for them. They've lost their leg or their arm or their joy. This has given people an opportunity to find that again, find their physical and mental high vibrating point, and that's what it did for me. I recognised that, and just being amongst that kind of cohort of internationally people who had chosen to serve their country and come back different, and being given that opportunity to go and compete together. And it's not necessarily about the competition and the gold medals, but more that experience of seeing each other just thrive and achieve. That was what was all about for me, that just power of sport to bring people together.
Yeah, and I think, like you said again, it's purpose. So you've been very busy in your post-military life, advocating for veterans and their families, working as a veteran peer support worker for Open Arms and an ambassador for Soldier On. Can you share with us a bit about these roles and what they entail and what's the most rewarding part for you?
Yeah, so Adam, like I said, I've had a real struggle post-military, and then I made it my mission to help others to not have that poor experience. So I was actually fortunate enough to be asked to be an ambassador for Soldier On. They had helped me post-discharge to get into cycling and become a better cyclist. And so, yeah, I've been able to sort of work with veterans in that space, sort of with that social connection and physical activity stuff. With Open Arms, I worked there for a little while as a peer support worker, which means I'm a lived experience person with a mental health challenge. So I was allocated people who were either serving still or post, transitioning out, to sort of walk beside them in a journey where they were struggling or needed just to hear that they're not alone, and also that there's hope that you'll get through this. So that was a really uplifting and rewarding job. And since sort of more recently, I've taken on a role as the chair of the Young Veterans Committee for the Return Services League. And so what I've recognised in my sort of experiences within the veteran community and ex-serving organisations is that finding something within where you live, your hometown, to provide that sort of support in terms of veteran support, it's probably the most important, because I live in a country town, so the only thing I have available to me is the return services, like the RSL sub-branch. And so I've injected myself into sort of working in my community. Post this interview, Adam, I'll be going up to visit 101-year-old World War II veteran John, who's up in the old people's home. He's that's, for me, like, connecting with people is really important. And he knows that I served. He probably doesn't get his head around, like, he wouldn't have had women in the service when he went through. So it's a novelty maybe for him to talk to someone like me. Then I just love hearing his stories. So yeah, it's that really community grassroots stuff that I really think I'm passionate about now.
Absolutely. And I'm sitting across from you and it shines through. I can see the smile on your face, and it's a purpose again. And I think I was talking to a veteran the other day, Sarah, about this, and it came up in conversation. A veteran, people's perception of a veteran is different. They see the older veterans and they don't, the younger veterans struggle a little bit because they're not, and I've seen veterans say, oh, you're wearing the medals on the wrong side of your chest. They should be on the other side. And I think it's getting better, but I think there's more work that needs to be done.
Yeah, and this is how we do it, is that, just average age of the RSL is 76 years old, So, and that's today, as at today. So just by being there and saying, hey, look, we might have served in different eras, different conflicts, but we share an experience. We share the feeling of having served our country. Let's be friends, let's interact. My service is no better than yours. We all did the same thing. We all served our country. So if we keep that in mind, hopefully there will be progress and people will embrace, change and we'll all be happy.
Absolutely. And so you're raising two young boys, George 9 and David 7, and you coach their rugby and little athletics. What do you love about these roles most? I love sport, as you know. And I think, seeing children and being someone visible to say, look, I'm here to support you and I want you to do well, and just, again, most of the young kids, little athletics and, local community rugby is based on volunteers, parents stepping up to support these initiatives so that the kids can keep doing them. So, I think you'll find a lot of veterans always stick their hand up in their communities to coach the cricket or, manage the swimming team or whatever. So I think that just reinforces the type of people who serve, they give of themselves. And I just want to sort of show my boys that's what we do. We support each other. Obviously, I love sport. That helps. But, yeah, I just love any more opportunities I can hang out with my kids as well, not just drop them off at rugby training, but be there and hold the pad while they tackle. And, yeah. Absolutely. So you've taken on a part-time consultancy role assisting a DFAT program to improve gender equality and women's leadership in the Pacific Island countries and territories. Can you share with us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough to come across a company in Yass, my hometown, that they're specialised in sort of international aid development and climate change and big issues, that want to make the world a better place. So threw my resume in, and next day I got a phone call saying, when can you start? So yeah, I've recently worked on a few initiatives supporting the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade in sort of gender equality initiatives throughout the region. And obviously I'm super passionate about that sort of thing, and it's been really rewarding. And just working with people who are experts in their field of gender equality and disability inclusion and climate change and just all sorts of things that just open my mind up to another world of making the world a better place.
Absolutely, and it's great work, well done. And recently you spoke you were a witness in the Royal Commission. Without going into detail, what was it for you that made you go forward and speak?
Yeah, I guess I've lost a couple of mates to suicide, men I've served with and a woman who took their lives as a result of their service, I believe. So to me, I think it's an issue that needs to have a Royal Commission. We need to talk about suicide and why the rates are so high in the veteran community. I think, again, I've alluded to transitioning out after giving a lifetime of service and then completely losing your identity has been a big factor in that. Also, obviously, the trauma from service that you can't underestimate how powerful that can be in someone's life if it's not dealt with. So I felt like, and from my own lived experience of feeling like I'm not sure I want to be here anymore, and how I got to that point and how I pulled myself out, but also what could be done when people in that most vulnerable state, what could have been done better. So that's why I wanted to have my voice heard, and I felt like it was a worthwhile thing to do.
Absolutely. So out of the Royal Commission, what do you hope is the outcome going forward for veterans, and what support do you hope is gained from the findings?
I hope that this Royal Commission does deliver tangible recommendations that are actioned. I think we've had a lot of inquiries in the past into veterans' issues that have been more a bureaucratic process and a paper shuffling activity without real tangible results. So with the Royal Commission, it's my real, hope that this is more than a toothless tiger, and that actually brings about change that's required within the veteran affairs and the ex-serving organisation space, and, within defence itself, in terms of preparing people, creating more resilient, building people's resiliences, before they discharge, and making, setting them up for success and not discarding them like they're a broken bit of kit.
Absolutely. No, I had this conversation with Harry Moffat last week, and he's got a new educational program that he's implementing, that he goes back and says, from day one, you start your transition out of defence now, so that it's, and whether it's TAFE, whether it's university, whatever it is, and he's very passionate about it as well, that to give veterans something to move on to after defence, and especially those who have been medically discharged, who, that they saw themselves as lifers. And yeah, I can see that, hopefully that they can see purpose and move forward, and, hopefully the Royal Commission can, the findings, as you said, it's not a toothless tiger. There's actual change, and there needs to be change, because, as you said, we are losing too many veterans each year. So absolutely. Yeah. So recently, you are working on your new business, Good to Go Mindset. Can you tell us a little bit about this and your hopes and dreams for this new exciting venture?
Yeah, sure, Adam. This is the real Sarah coming back. My whole life, I've loved sport and fitness, and wanted to be in that space. So now I'm actually going to enact that, and I've created my vision of a coaching and sort of health and well-being sort of coaching and fitness programming. So yeah, I'm about to launch, and I think I've signed one very excitable young podcaster called Adam.
Yes, you've signed. Yes, I'm now going to be. You're going to be my coach. So, which I'm really excited about. And yeah, no, I have to say, Sarah, it's going to be awesome to be working with you. And the reason that I came on board with you is I just loved your energy. I loved everything that you stand for, and that's why I want to smash out my fitness goals. And it will go on record now that I have committed to my first triathlon with Sarah in November. So, which, if you had said that 2 years ago, I would have said you are dreaming. So yeah, so I know I'm in for an absolute exciting time ahead. And I'm really, really excited. So,
I'm so excited for you. You will not look back. You will love it. It will be painful. There could be some chafe involved, but mate, you will, when you've crossed that finish line in November, you will just know how far you can go with your physical side.
Absolutely, and mental too. So no, absolutely. So, looking back now, Sarah, at your time in the army, would you still join, and would you change anything?
Oh, look, we all look back and go, what would I do different? For sure, there would be things I would have done differently. I would have definitely not second-guessed and had so much self-doubt, second-guess myself all the time. I would have known that I am just as capable as the people around me, and sort of embrace that. I think that would have helped with my sort of resilience in the way I approached everything. But yeah, look, again, I think we all go through a journey. I wouldn't change the struggles I've had. It's made me who I am today. And I've loved having the privilege of wearing the uniform, being in the Australian Army, continuing a tradition of our forebears who served our country so honourably. And I just some days pinch myself that I had that opportunity as well.
Absolutely. So what are your plans, Sarah, going forward with George, David and your family?
Look, just to try and really appreciate everything, all the gifts I have, especially my sons and the people in my life. My partner Ryan, he's an amazing support to me. He's studying psychology, veteran himself, and he's just a real source of inspiration and grounding for me, because he's not as hyperactive as me, I guess. But yeah, I take great joy in being around people like yourself,
Sarah,
who really want to make this world a better place.
A quote that I believe sums up your life and your story: to never give up. Awesome to be, and if I may read this quote, fearlessness may be a gift, but perhaps more precious is the courage that comes from cultivating the habit of refusing to let fear dictate one's actions. Sarah, your story is one of true grit, determination, courage and resilience. I would like to thank you for your service to our country and for coming on True Blue History and sharing your story on this special 50th episode. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Adam, and True Blue History for having me. A real honour and privilege to speak to you today and share. So thank you.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review for the podcast on whatever platform you get your podcasts. And if you feel like supporting us, you can now via our Patreon page. That's patreon.com/True Blue History, or buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/True Blue History, and check out our new website, truebluehistory.com, for more great content.